Hi. We're continuing with C.S. Lewis's discussion of marriage and love in C.S. Lewis's book Mere Christianity, the third section, which is about Christian behavior. I would say this discussion about being in love is probably a more commonly accepted idea of what makes divorce today reasonable in the minds of people, or something that is accepted as, well, we're not in love anymore, we drifted apart, those kinds of statements. Here's what Lewis says: being in love is a good thing, but it is not the best thing. There are many things below it, but there are also things above it. You cannot make it a basis of a whole life. It is a noble feeling, but it is still a feeling. Now, no feeling can be relied on to last in its full intensity, and even to last at all. Knowledge can last, principles can last, habits can last, but feelings come and go. And in fact, whatever people say, the state called being in love usually does not last. If the old fairy tale ending, they lived happily ever after, is taken to mean they felt for the next 50 years exactly as they felt the day before they were married, then it says what probably never was, nor ever could be true, and would be highly undesirable if it were. Who could bear to live in that excitement for even 5 years? What would become of your work, your appetite, your sleep, your friendships? But of course, ceasing to be in love need not mean ceasing to love. Love in this second sense, love as distinct from being in love, is not merely a feeling. It is a deep unity, maintained by the will and deliberately strengthened by habit. I want to repeat that line. It is a deep unity maintained by the will and deliberately strengthened by habit, reinforced by, in Christian marriages, the grace which both ask and receive from God. They can have this love for each other even at those moments when they do not like each other. As you love yourself even when you do not like yourself, they can retain this love even when each could easily, if they allowed themselves, be in love with someone else. Being in love first moved them to promise fidelity. This quieter love enables them to keep the promise. It is on this love that the engine of marriage is run. Being in love was the explosion that started it. If you disagree with me, of course you will say, he knows nothing about it. He's not married. You may quite possibly be right. But before you say that, make quite sure that you are judging me by what you really know from your own experience and from watching the lives of your friends, and not by ideas you have derived from novels and films. This is not so easy to do as people think. Our experience is colored through and through by books and plays and the cinema, and it takes patience and skill to disentangle the things we have really learned from life for ourselves. People get from books the ideas that if you have married the right person, you may expect to go on being in love forever. As a result, when they find they are not, they think this proves that they made a mistake and are entitled to a change, not realizing that when they have changed, the glamour will presently go out of the new love just as it went out of the old one. In this department of life, as in every other, thrills come at the beginning and do not last. The sort of thrill a boy has at the first idea of flying will not go on when he has joined the RAF and is really learning to fly. The thrill you feel on first seeing some delightful place dies away when you really go to live there. Does this mean it would be better not to learn to fly and not to live in the beautiful place? By no means. In both cases, if you go through with it, the dying away of the first thrill will be compensated for by a quieter and more lasting kind of interest. What is more, and I can hardly find words to tell you how important I think this is, it is just that people who are ready to submit to the loss of the thrill and settle down to the sober interest, who are then most likely to meet new thrills in some quite different direction. The man who has learned to fly and become a good pilot will suddenly discover music. The man who has settled down to live in the beauty spot will discover gardening. This is, I think, one little part of what Christ meant by saying that a thing will not really live unless it first dies. It is simply no good trying to keep any thrill, and it is the worst thing that you can do. Let the thrill go. Let it die away. Go on through that period of death into the quieter interest and happiness that follow, and you will find you are living in a world of new thrills all the time. So instead, I would say, instead of the storybook ending of living happily ever after, we might want to change that to living happily after all. So the next time we're going to talk about loving your neighbor. How does one do that? And I'm going to link to this video, a video called Yahweh's Marriage to Israel, a model of covenant faithfulness, and a second video that was also about marriage. We did a series of them. This one, though, is JW's God, not the God of Paul, and it's based on the scriptures from Romans 9 to 11, the history of God's covenant keeping.